Hi, Minnesota Bound podcast listeners. I'm Realtor Heather Womack. I grew up in Minnesota and love all the outdoor activities we have here. In fact, I love Minnesota so much that I moved back here from Europe to raise my family in the land of beautiful hikes, refreshing clear lakes, and winter fun. That's why I'm reaching out to the listeners of the Minnesota Bound podcast. As a realtor, I've helped hundreds of folks buy their first home, sell the home they have, purchase a lake cabin, or start investing in Minnesota real estate. If you love adventure but need some new scenery, call me. My website is heatherwomackrealty.com. That's Heather Womack, WOMACK, realty.com.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Minnesota Bound podcast, the stories behind the stories. I'm your host, Laura Schara, for this week, and I'm really excited about our next guest. I'm going to give you a hint. He's with the Minnesota DNR, and we are going to be talking about all things turkey hunting. Turkey hunting season is right around the corner, and we've got some tips and resources that we're going to chat about for beginners in turkey hunting. But before I get to our guest, I just want to thank our sponsors for today. I'd like to first thank our newest sponsor, Realtor Heather Womack, also Minnesota Propane, Connecticut Water, Star Bank, and also the Minnesota DNR. We're always so thankful for our sponsors. All right, it's time to introduce our guest, James Burnham. He's with the Minnesota DNR. He's the R3 coordinator. And James, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. It's great to be here.
Awesome. We're excited to have you on today because turkey hunting season is around the corner, yes?
Absolutely. Yep. It's coming right up in the middle of April.
It sure is. And I have to tell you that turkey hunting is one of my favorite things to do because out of all wild game, wild turkey is one of my favorites. I don't know about you. Do you like wild turkey?
I love wild turkey hunting. It's definitely kind of top 1-2. Like it's tied with deer hunting for me because, you know, I hunt deer to put meat in the freezer, but I hunt turkey to have a blast. And it's just, there's so much to do in the spring woods. It's incredible.
It totally is. And before we get to, you know, some of the resources the Minnesota DNR offers beginner hunters, you know, what do you think, what is it about hunting turkeys versus deer or pheasant, another wild game that makes it so unique to you?
Well, you know, for most of us that are not in the Rockies or haven't had the chance to go elk hunting, the thing about turkey hunting that's different from a lot of the other eastern hunts that you can do is you're actually engaging and communicating with the animal. And you know, you can do it a little bit with deer. You can rattle some antlers. You can do some grunt calls, etc. But with turkey hunting, if you're doing it well and you get lucky and you get a bird on, you know, you're having a conversation with them and you're talking to them and they're talking to you and you're using that to try to play this little game of chess with them in the woods. And it's a blast. I mean, you're going full Dr. Dolittle on it, and you know, if things work out, you get a tremendous bird at the end of it, and they're delicious, and it's just a lot of fun.
I totally agree with you. There's nothing more exciting when, you know, you can hear a gobbler, a tom turkey pretty far away, and there are times where they are so desperate to find a girlfriend, and that's, you know, the idea a lot of times is you're sounding like kind of a damsel in distress, and they will travel far to come find you.
They will. I've seen toms cross 3 40s of corn to get
goodness.
to where we were at, and that included 2 drainage ditches.
Wow!
So it was, and the thing that was really remarkable about it is we had eyes on him way in the distance, and you know, he was just a little speck, and we were wondering what he was doing, and we finally realized that he was right with a hen at that moment, and he bred that hen, and we didn't know what was going to happen afterwards, and he just made a beeline straight for us.
I know, that's what's so unique about turkeys, and they'll still keep gobbling even when they get really close to you and it gets really exciting. And but I think they're, you know, for those who haven't spent any time turkey hunting, and if you live in, you know, the metro area, you see a lot of wild turkeys in neighborhoods, hanging out in your yard, and it almost seems like they're not afraid of anything. And people, I think, have the misconception that hunting wild turkeys is actually really easy. And in fact, they're pretty difficult to hunt as far as their eyesight and things, right? They're very keen on predators.
Absolutely, and their eyesight is really their primary defense mechanism. Yeah, it's really aggravating because every year I go out to hunt turkeys, and inevitably I'll get text messages from my friends and family that are taking pictures of turkeys in their neighborhood, literally on their neighbor's roof, and they're just sitting there going, "Why is this so hard for you?" And it's a very different it's a very different kind of bird. Those birds are those city birds are very accustomed to not being chased and not being hunted, and so they literally can stop traffic sometimes, right? They'll just wander out and everybody
Sure.
stops and they literally rule the roost as they're going across the road. But those birds that are out in the wild, it's a very different story. They are on everybody's lunch menu, so they're wary of coyotes, they're wary of skunks, they're wary of raccoons, they're wary of possums. They're wary of everything, and so when you actually get out into the woods, it's a very challenging hunt, and that's one of the reasons why it's appealing to me, because it is, you never know what's going to happen when you're out there, and they can pick you out so well. I mean, I've heard people swear that the only thing that gave them away was that their pupils dilated or contracted. I know for a fact that the only thing that I think spooked a bird one time was that they could see the exhalation of my breath as
Wow.
I was breathing, and it was enough to make them go the other way.
Yeah, it is. It's a challenging hunt, but at the same time, I also think it's rewarding in so many ways. If you harvest a bird, or even if you don't, wild turkey tastes delicious. It's one of my favorite wild games to prepare and to eat. But also, when you're out there, if you're not familiar with turkey hunting, you mostly start before sunrise. And when you can sit in a turkey blind or sit up against a tree and watch how the wild world wakes up, I think that is like one of the most spectacular, cool things to witness. And that's one of my favorite parts about turkey hunting, is just being able to see how the natural world wakes up in the morning, because people may not know that turkey roosts and they roost in trees at night, and they kind of trickle down and start feeding and pairing up again. But I think it is a really unique way to connect with nature, even if you harvest a bird or even if you don't. Do you agree with that?
100%. And so, a lot of folks, if they've gone out deer hunting, you kind of have that morning wake up as well, but springtime kicks that up to like 11, 12, 15, 20. I mean, it's just so much more is happening in the spring. You've got a bunch of spring migrants that are coming back all through the turkey season. For me, it's not just waking up after the night, it's waking up after the whole winter. The woods are just erupting with life. I usually, when I'm sitting early season turkey hunting, the ruffed grouse are drumming, so you get to hear that. You get to just feel that energy as things are happening. And here in Minnesota, it's tremendous because we usually go from, that very opening weekend is frequently covered in snow. So you can go from winter all the way through to Memorial Day, which can sometimes be 100 degrees, and you've got summer smack dab. So you've got that entire range of experience that you can have while you're out in the woods, and a lot happens in that time. And so there's just a lot to see. There's a lot to do on top of turkey hunting. I mean, I come home with a bird. That's fantastic. My reward is being out in the woods and just being able to see all that stuff.
That's so true. And so we are going to start chatting here quick about, if you haven't been turkey hunting before, the Minnesota DNR is here to help you. And before we get to that topic, James, I'm just going to thank a couple of our sponsors again. First, we want to also welcome once again our newest sponsor, Realtor Heather Womack. Welcome to the Minnesota Bound podcast. And also, did you know, according to the Environmental Protection Agency, that propane is almost 3 times more efficient than grid electricity? I think it's safe to say that we all do care about our planet. So it's time to do our part and use energy efficiently. We can reduce our environmental footprint. I love that. Just by heating our homes, cabins, water, businesses with propane, and it's the right energy right now. Propane, clean American energy. And for more information, go to propane.com. All right, James, for those who have not been turkey hunting before, the Minnesota DNR is there to help them out. And you have quite a program set up for beginners, and this can be done actually all via webinars. Do you want to talk to us a little bit about that?
Spring of 2020, we had a really big transition. We had to move away from our in-person programming, and we set up an online Learn to Turkey Hunt 101 webinar series. And I did that in conjunction with folks at the National Wild Turkey Federation. And we put together about 4 hours of content over 2 webinars that are posted up on our DNR website. And if you just do a quick, whatever web browser you like to use, whatever search tool you use, if you just search for the terms Minnesota DNR Learn to Hunt Turkey, you'll get to our webpage, and it's 4 hours of content. We had people that were asking us questions in real time, and we were able to answer them. And this year, we're going to be posting some additional material to augment that webinar series, videos on how to gut a bird, how to clean a bird, how to butcher a bird. So we're going to be building on that this spring.
Awesome. Very cool. And, some of the things that you guys go over on the class and are typically the things you need to get started. So obviously that would include, a license, hunter safety, gear that is needed. Is there a lot of things that you actually need to go out turkey hunting?
Turkey hunting is like a lot of hunting. It can be as complicated as you want it to be. We do a really good job of making things pretty complex. So you don't necessarily need all that. You need to have your license. So if you haven't taken your hunter's education, your hunter safety, your firearm safety, get that. You can get that online if you're 14 or older. That's going to be about 12 to 16 hours worth of work. So it's not, it's not a graduate degree, but I wouldn't save it for the last minute. So get your license. You need a physical tag to go onto the bird. So you need a physical license. So I would get that at a vendor, a licensed vendor. So that can be an outdoors store. A lot of holiday stores around the state of Minnesota have vendor locations. Or if you're not sure where to buy a license, you can contact our information center at the DNR and ask them to point you towards the direction of a closest vendor. We provide that service as well. So you need your license. You need a legal shotgun and ammunition. And in Minnesota, that is anything that is 10 gauge or smaller. Most people use a 12 or a 20 gauge for a shotgun. It needs to be bird shot. And, that's literally all you really need to legally hunt turkeys. Now, there's a bunch of stuff that go on top of that to help. And, we talk about we just talked earlier about calling and calls and having conversations with the birds. Having a couple of calls will help, but you don't need a bunch. And, we talked about the turkey's eyesight. So having some good clothes that break up your outline as a person. Camouflage is great. It's not an invisibility cloak. It's not gonna, you're not gonna go all predator in the woods and just completely disappear to these birds. But what it does is hopefully it makes the birds unsure of what you are, so that they can get close enough that you can get an ethical shot on them. They're still going to see you. But having that clothing to break you up, having a covering on your face or face paint is a really good idea, and having gloves as well. But if you don't have any camo, or you can't afford camo, or it's just not in your cards, having those dull earth tones, dull browns, dull greens, dull grays, you can mix and match those. And having some baggy clothes to, again, just kind of break up your outline so that they're not quite sure what you are, and hopefully get them close enough to get a shot.
And speaking of getting a shot with beginners, one of the things that's really important to hunting and sportsmanship and things like that is making sure that you're doing your best to honor the animal with having pretty good accuracy with your shot. And do you suggest that people, go out and practice shooting targets at a gun range or something before they really get out into the woods, just to make sure that they're really comfortable with their shooting?
Absolutely. When new hunters come to these sorts of things, the perception that they have is hunting is, you go out, you sit down, something comes along, you take a shot at it. For most of the hunters that I know, the sitting and the shooting, that's maybe 5% of all the stuff that we do leading up to it. We're making sure our gear works. We're making sure the spot has the game that we're looking for and that we can get a decent shot at it. We do a lot of scouting, and that may sound like an intimidating learning curve, but really it's just a walk in the woods. You're walking out there, you're taking time to just take a walk in the woods. You're looking for sign. Up here in Minnesota, we're blessed at this time of year with plenty of snow on the ground, which makes it really easy to track turkeys. So there's a bunch of folks down south that don't have that advantage when they're trying to track turkeys. Well, I mean, they might now because it's snowing in Texas, but most years they don't have that advantage. So get out, take a walk in the woods, look for where turkey sign is at so that you can try to identify where those spots are. Learn your equipment as best you can, because when you're out there, the better you know the equipment, the less you have to think about what you're doing with it. And when we talk about turkey hunting and practicing your shots, you're going to hear this term patterning your gun. And what that means is you're literally looking for the pattern that the shot pellets make when they leave that shotgun at different distances, because you want a certain amount of pellets in that kill zone for the turkey so that it's a quick, humane take of that animal. Usually when you're hunting turkeys, you're aiming for the head. You want that to be a good shot. You want it to be a clean shot. When you hit them in the head, they're going to drop right away. You don't put a lot of pellets in the meat. That makes cooking it and eating it a lot easier later.
It's true.
Yeah.
Less dentist visits.
Yeah, it's going to cut down on the dental bills if you're a good shot. But you need to know what that pellet spread looks like at different distances, because that's where you're going to find out, okay, at 50 yards, my pellets are way too dispersed and they're not going to be dense enough. I'm not going to get the ethical shot that I want. I need to have my maximum be 40 yards or 30 yards, whatever it is that keeps, around 20 to 50 pellets in that kill zone. I know guys that go less dense. I know guys that go down to like 8 or 6 pellets in the kill zone. I'm not that trusting. So I tend to be conservative in my patterning, because I want to know that when I make a shot that bird's going down.
Very true. And also, the difference of using a scope or not having a scope on your shotgun can make a big difference for people. Yes?
Absolutely. And red dot scopes are legal for turkey hunting here in Minnesota. I personally don't use a scope. I've just got the bead sight on the end of my shotgun. It works fine for me, but there's folks out there that having that red dot, having that scope really helps them. It really gets them to focus in on that kill zone.
Sure. Because we're going to be honest with you, if you've not been turkey hunting before, your adrenaline gets going because it's exciting, and you have an opportunity to harvest a bird, and that plays a role too. So the adrenaline gets going, your nerves get going a little bit, and making sure you're accurate is a very important role that you play when you are hunting. So really good advice there. And I want to get back to a point, James, where you were starting to talk about, scouting for turkeys, and many people don't even know where to find turkeys. And so before we get there, I want to, speaking of land, et cetera, I want to thank the Minnesota DNR, and Minnesota's wildlife management areas are a vast array of lands all across Minnesota. There are approximately 1,400 wildlife management areas that are important for not only the protection of wildlife, but also Minnesota's outdoor recreation opportunities, including turkey hunting. So to find out more about Minnesota wildlife management areas, go to mndnr.gov/WMAS. So speaking of wildlife management areas, James, let's first start with, where do you normally go to scout turkeys? They're not sitting necessarily in a cornfield. Where do they like to hang out?
Well, the good news is that these days the turkey has had a remarkable recovery in Minnesota. 43 years ago we didn't have any turkeys. They were extirpated. They were removed from the state. Um, in the 70s, 29 birds were brought up from Missouri and basically restarted the population here in Minnesota. And so, as far as I'm aware, I have yet to have anybody refute this. As far as I know, all the birds that we've got have come from that original founding population through a very vigorous trap and release program in conjunction with the National Wild Turkey Federation. So these days we are living in the golden age of turkeys in Minnesota and many other states in the upper Midwest because, you know, even a generation ago, people didn't turkey hunt because there were no turkeys.
Yep.
So the good news is that for the bottom, 2/3 of Minnesota, you've got a good chance of having turkeys around anywhere. Now, that's one thing to say. The other thing to say is that they're going to be 30 yards in front of you when you're holding a shotgun. So how do you hone in on them? They really like a good mix of habitat. They really like, a lot of the skill sets that I use for hunting deer and honing in on deer are very applicable to turkeys. They love acorns. They love hard mass trees. So that deciduous transition zone that we have running through at a diagonal angle through the middle of the state here in Minnesota, they really love that area. Turkeys were first reintroduced down in the southeast of Minnesota up near Caledonia. And so, that kind of driftless area, those hills, those valleys, that topography, they love that because it gives them an opportunity to get into some of those trees, to spend the night and roost up. They get to just like kind of walk up to the top of a hill and just hop over to a nice branch. It's easy living. And so they really like that. They can be found in cornfields picking up waste grain, but they kind of like having cover to run into as well. So, some of those massive soy fields that we've got in the western part of the state, they're not going to be hanging out there because it's just way too open. But if you're living out in western Minnesota, some of those river bottoms, they really love those as well. And so there's a variety of places you can find them. They're a really adaptable bird, and as long as they've got food on the ground, they're pretty tolerant to some pretty extreme temperatures. So finding where the food sources are, whether that's, like I said, mass trees or waste grain agriculture, is a good place to start looking. So look for those patchy habitat types. I tend to like to look for topography because that's those are the behaviors I know with the birds. But there's plenty of folks that they can find them in areas with no topography.
Isn't it interesting? They really have adapted to living in many different environments. It's fascinating to me, but it is very true about the hills and the valleys and where they have kind of the easy life to be able to roost up in a tree and hop right down and start eating. And with the DNR, with hunting, there's, if you haven't been hunting, et cetera, I think we should explain, the differences with public land and how to find public land to go hunting versus, if you want permission to hunt on private land, that obviously takes permission.
Yep.
So do you want to explain kind of the differences? Like, what is a Minnesota wildlife management area?
So a wildlife management area is basically land that's been set aside to help foster game and non-game species. So it's space that we're setting aside to help build wildlife populations. The main intent of that is for game species, but there's a lot of non-game species that take advantage of those areas as well, and they just provide a tremendous amount of habitat for a variety of wildlife around the state. We have a tremendous tool here in Minnesota with the Recreation Compass. Now that's the name of the tool. It's you go to the Minnesota DNR website and just do a search for Recreation Compass or do a search for Minnesota Recreation Compass on any web browser, and it'll take you to this interactive map where you can look at and identify all the different kinds of public lands that we have available to us to do anything from turkey hunt to trail run to bird watch to sit in a park. So it's a really fantastic tool. If you're looking for a way to get out, if you're looking for a spot that's near you, I highly recommend going to it. Our wildlife management areas are a specific subset of the public lands that the DNR manages with wildlife in mind. And we've got them all over the state. And one of the biggest things that I hear from new hunters and existing hunters is access to areas where they can go hunting. You know, it's a big issue. But Minnesota has a lot of public land that's available to us. We're really blessed with a tremendous amount of access to land. All told, we have 12 million acres of public land that are available to us for recreation. And
Wow.
even within the metro area, we have within, you know, if you kind of draw a ring around the bulk of the metro and go within 50 miles of that ring, how many WMAs would you think that we would have in Minnesota, Laura?
I guess just in the metro area?
Just within 50 miles of the metro.
You wouldn't think it would be very much just by the amount of homes and development that's taken place in the metro area.
Right.
But I'm guessing I'm wrong.
Well, see, here's the thing. So if you look at that, and let's take the little tiny WMAs out of the equation, okay? Because those are, you know, there's a bunch of, you know, there's no size requirement on WMAs, and so some of them can be really small postage stamps. So let's say WMAs that are over 100 acres. That's a decent amount of space to go tromping around.
Sure
Within
is.
50 miles of the metro, we have over 150 of those.
Wow.
Now, they're not all created equal. Some of them are bottomland forests. Some of them are tall grass prairie. Some of them are dense woods. But they're there, and they give us a chance to get out and explore new spots. And there are a lot of them that are out there.
That's incredible. And you actually set aside each season specific areas for the turkey hunting season. Is that correct?
We set aside
Well, not set aside, but you have certain areas that people can do a lottery, right, to have permission to hunt on those land? On that
Gotcha.
land?
Yep. So we have 3 WMAs that we require people to enter a lottery in. That lottery has already closed. It closed on the 12th. And so that's Carlos Avery WMA, Mille Lacs WMA, and Whitewater WMA. And those are kind of the 3 last holdouts of the old lottery system that went away last year. But yeah, we do that to kind of manage the amount of people that can get in there at any one time.
Sure. Yeah, it's a great, I was promoting that on my Instagram page because that's a really great way to get into some public land that probably has a lot of turkeys on it, and you know it's not going to be overpressured with hunters and things like that. But you know, those that are new, when you say the word WMAS or Minnesota Wildlife Management Areas, can be really confusing. They're like, well, what is that? What does that mean? And et cetera, et cetera. And is there a place where people can look up, public land that is available for turkey hunting specifically? Because I'm assuming not every Minnesota Wildlife Management area you can just go and hunt in, correct?
There are a handful of WMAs that have specific rules, and there are WMAs that are, right next door to other types of public land that may not have hunting as a designated activity. That recreation compass that I mentioned earlier, if you click on a parcel, it'll take you to a link that will break down everything that you can do there, what it's being managed for. So we do call, wildlife management areas. Management is an activity. So the DNR goes in there and they manage that habitat. They keep invasive species out. They keep trees from encroaching onto the prairies so that specific types of wildlife can have those habitats. Because if you just let it go, you run the risk of invasive species coming in, buckthorn, garlic mustard, all the nasties coming in that aren't as useful for wildlife. So it is an activity that the DNR is doing out there to cultivate and maintain those areas and manage them for wildlife.
I love that. And, I think what, if you are, again, a beginner hunter, understanding that when you pay for a hunting license, that money goes back to the Minnesota DNR to help manage these wildlife management areas and, of course, other conservation efforts. But it's really important that we obviously support that cause, but that's one of the reasons why you're buying a license, is that we can have turkeys and all sorts of other wildlife for, of course, thousands of years to come, hopefully. So, and then in regards to, private land, we just want to make sure we're informing people that, if you are deciding to, you see a piece of land or you're seeing a lot of turkeys, that land is probably owned by someone. And it's always, you want to make sure that you are asking permission to go hunting on it, correct?
Absolutely, yeah. And that's not a bad strategy. If you're looking for a place to go, especially this time of year, the annual cycle of the birds is at this point in the year, they want to be all grouped together. It's safety in numbers. It's more warmth when they're cuddling on the branch at night. So they're all they call it flocked up. They're all in these big flocks. So if you just drive around, sometimes you'll see 10, 20, 30, 40 of them in a field. And it's not a bad idea to find who owns that field and knock on their door and say, hey, look, I see you got a bunch of turkeys out there. I'd really love to hunt them. Is there any way that I could do it? And sometimes they say yes, and so at that point, you make sure you have permission, make sure you know where the property line is, make sure if they have any special rules that you find out what those rules are and you abide by them. You are a guest on their land. Be polite, be respectful, pick up after yourself. If they've got gates closed on the property, keep those gates closed. They're letting you have access to their spot, and you need to be very appreciative and respectful for it.
Very true and very well said. Those things are all very important, on top of asking permission, but also being really respectful. And many times you'll find that you might be able to build a relationship with the landowner and kind of repeat the process yearly, if you like. Of course, if you are, again, respectful and do it the right way. So a lot of people do hunting that way. And I have a couple more questions to ask you, and specifically in regards to finding mentors and other resources that are available for those that are like, oh, this seems overwhelming just to watch a webinar and think I can go do this on my own. But before we get to that, James, I just want to thank more of our sponsors, Connecticut Drinking Water. I am very picky when it comes to my drinking water. I have been for years. I have the reverse osmosis drinking water system from Connecticut, and I absolutely love it. I think I've had this water drinking system, I don't know, it's got to be almost 10 years now, but it never gets old. I can tell you that, because it takes out the contaminants in the water. It removes chlorine. And most importantly, it really tastes good. And when water tastes good, you drink more of it, and it's really good for your health. So having Connecticut also means using less plastic water bottles. Of course, very beneficial for our environment. So for more information, you can visit Connecticut.com to find a dealer near you. So James, if someone is wanting, they watch the webinar and they go through the hunter safety and they do all those things, but they're still wanting, kind of more a mentor or other resources that are available, you guys are there to point people in the right direction. You have quite a few resources, don't you?
We do. And again, if we have a landing page, we have a how-to wild turkey hunting guide on our website. That's a great place to start. We've got our classes there, but under that, we've got a whole bunch of content that you can click on and find how to hunt, or find where to hunt, find how to hunt, the gear, some of the bits and pieces that are really important to know, some basic biology, and some additional helpful information. On top of that, there are a lot of folks that are out there that want to share how to hunt turkeys with folks that are interested. So finding local chapters of conservation organizations like the National Wild Turkey Federation is a good place to start. Before we were living in pandemic times, the National Wild Turkey Federation had mentored hunts every year where they would organize and get folks out and get them on birds and have a tremendous time doing it. We at the DNR, we have a mentor coordinator. His name is Benji Cohn. You can find him on our website as well, and he's working with our team here in the outreach section of the Division of Fish and Wildlife to assemble a list of mentors that hopefully will be available to help people get out and learn some of this stuff. And yeah, we're trying to build those bridges between the folks that, there are a lot of hunters that are out there that all they want is for more people to be out hunting turkeys with them or hunting turkeys on their own. And there are a lot of folks that want to learn how to turkey hunt and just don't know how to begin. So we're really trying to be a bridge and facilitate those connections.
Awesome. James, you were so helpful today. Thank you so much for chatting with me and our listeners on all things turkey hunting. Harvesting your own food has a really special meaning. And I know there's a really increased interest in, kind of wild game eating and hence wild game or hunting. And so you've been really helpful. And is there one more time, let's give our listeners just the website that is available for more information.
Sure. If you just go and do a web search for MN DNR hunting wild turkey or learn to hunt turkey 101, it'll get you to our landing page that has our virtual class. It has our additional content. There's a lot of information that's on there. And if anybody has any questions, feel free to reach out. You can find our contact information on the website, and we'll be happy to help. And it really is. It's a tremendous time to be in the woods. And even if you don't come home with a bird, there's opportunities to come home with ramps, with morels.
That's true.
I mean, it's a buffet of delicious food that is just remarkable. And when you think about it, those morels, pound for pound, are probably more profitable than the turkeys if you were gonna put them on a dollar amount on them. But
if you find those morel mushrooms, trust me, you don't want to tell anybody else where your spot is because they won't eat it next time.
that's morels are about the only thing that people have gotten more prickly about than their favorite deer stand spot.
That's so true.
It's impressive, but it really it's just a great way to be out in the woods. And it's been a long winter, and I know everybody's cold, and it's a great time to be out there. I do want to say, be careful, be safe, treat ticks seriously, take precautions against ticks because you will find them in the turkey woods.
You sure will. And in fact, I can speak to that personally. When I was turkey hunting with my dad, we were out together and he was like, here, sit next to this tree. And I did. And we were sitting in a, kind of an open field that had some cover. And we were probably out there for, I'm going to say like an hour and a half. And I stand up and I realized I sat in a tick nest. I had ticks, hundreds of them, all over me, crawling on my clothes. And thankfully,
that just gave me the willies.
Panic attack. But my dad was laughing for a minute. I was like, this actually isn't funny. But thank goodness I was safe. I wasn't bit by any of the ticks, I think, because I found them so quickly. But today we still laugh about that. So yes, make sure you look for ticks after you're done sitting in the woods. Absolutely. And protect yourself from those little guys because they are not good for you.
Correct.
All right, James Burnham, thank you so much for joining us today. You are a wealth of information. Again, thank you to the Minnesota DNR. And also we want to thank our last sponsor, Star Bank.
Hi there, Ron Schara here for Star Bank. If you're putting your money into mega banks down the street, who knows where that money's being used? Bank locally. Keep your money local with a community bank that actually cares about you, your family, your business, and your goals. Check out the bank we use at Minnesota Bound. Try Minnesota's own Star Bank. You can find them online at starbank.net. When you call Star Bank, you actually hear a real living person answering the phone. Star Bank has 10 convenient locations around Minnesota to serve you and all the mobile banking products that you need to manage your money. Check out all that Star Bank has to offer at starbank.net.
Thank you, James.
It was a pleasure. Thank you so much.